Greetings and salutations, GeoNerds. Today we're on Mars. And I swore I just saw Curiosity doing some doughies in those sand dunes over there. But anyway, today's rockumentary is about the East Coast hotspots in Australia. 2,000 kilometres long, so it's a long story. But anyway, we'll try and summarise it and make it a little easy to understand. So you know what I'm going to say. Let's rock. Well, folks, this is Cape Hillsborough, north of Mackay, and that little island's called Wedge Island, and that's the first place this mantle plume structure touches the east coast of Australia today. Now, this thing is unique to the east coast of Australia, remarkable geological phenomenon, a chain of volcanoes, 30 million or so years old, stretching over 2,000 kilometres. It's the longest one in the world, all born from a very fiery mantle plume. And it's not just a scenic thing, it actually is testament to the forces that move the continents around on our planet. Because the mantle plume doesn't move, it's Australia that's moved. So there are 3 of these hotspot chains on the east coast of Australia, and I'll mark them there. And there's another 2 of them in the ocean, if you can see as well. We'll talk briefly about those, but the ones on the coast are the ones we're really going to have a bit of a look at. So I think the one that has the most, I suppose the most scenic things is the Cosgrove hotspot. Now these things are named after the southernmost identified feature on their list, and Cosgrove's a little tiny town in Victoria. We'll have a brief look at the geology of that. So you can see most of those dark areas there, that's forestry because the farmers don't want it, because it's all part of that hotspot chain. They're all lava fields, or they're olivine basalt lava. And they believe now, although there's no evidence other than calculative evidence, that the Cosgrove hotspot in particular is now just off the northeast coast of Tasmania, northwest coast of Tasmania, I should say, about there. Anyway, let's go and have a look at some of the mechanics that drive this. Well, if you're one of the people that believes this is the world, and the world we live in, or even worse, if you believe it's this, or even if you believe this with us on the outside and the reptile people on the inside, this is not the video for you. Matter of fact, this is probably not the channel for you. So it could be a good time to change to Disney Plus or something like that. Now, we're pretty sure today that the Earth looks something like this inside. There will be surprises, but it's something like this. Crust, asthenosphere, the outer mantle, the lower mantle, the outer core, the inner core, roughly. And we know the Earth's full of, this sort of stuff. It's a big fiery ball of lava. Well, not so fast, Fangio. There's no lava inside the Earth. So this mantle, we often see lava lamps used to say, mantle plumes are a great big thick pile of gloopy stuff coming up, and that's why we get these mantle plumes. Well, yeah, that's true, but this is the pitch experiment at QUT. It's been running for 40 years. They've had about 8 drops, and this is another drop about to go off. Let me tell you, this stuff is like water compared to the mantle plume. To give you some viscosity points on the mantle plume, the viscosity of water, we won't get too much into the science, but the viscosity of water is about 1. So, it's measured in Pascal seconds. So it's about 1. The viscosity of honey is between 10 and 20, between 2 and 10, depending on the honey. Molasses, 5 to 10, that's pretty goopy. Glass, 10 to the 20. Power of 20, it's pretty thick, but it's fluid. Lead, 10 to the power of 19. Steel, 10 to the power of 20. This is the viscosity of these substances. I'm going to call them liquids because they've got to be under pressure. The asthenosphere, which is the bit just below the crust, the viscosity of that is about 10 to the 20, 10 to the 9Z. It's about as fluid as glass. The upper mantle, try 2.8 times 10 to the 22, and the lower mantle 10 to the 23 or 10 to the 24. So this stuff is, yes, it does move, but it moves very slowly. A mantle plume to do a turnover can take 500 million years. These things don't happen quickly, and they don't go away in a hurry. Well, I'm sure all good geo-nerds have seen a diagram like this before. Continental subduction, blah-de-blah. But what we're looking at today is this green line. It's called the Moho discontinuity, and it will become important to our mantle hotspots and why Australia has them and where they are. But before we can talk about that, we've got to talk about this fellow. He's a Croatian guy around the turn of the century, and his name is Adriana Mohorovic. And you can't believe how long I had to practice that. Anyway, about 1903, there was a magnitude 6.3 earthquake that struck Zagreb, and he just happened to be there, being the professor of physics at the university at the time. So he was able to gather the data from all of the seismic sensors that they placed around the city. Shocked to me they had them in those days, but they must have. And he was able to find a discontinuity between the Earth's crust and the mantle, about 60 kilometres down. That was clearly identifiable as the seismic waves went through it as a phase change. So that became known as the unofficial boundary between the asthenosphere, or the upper mantle, and the Earth's crust. Now, it isn't black and white. It's mainly black, but anyway, that is the measure we have of how thick the Earth crust is nowadays. We measure how far it is down to what is now known as the Moho, because no one's going to say that name. So it's called the Moho discontinuity. I'm going to show you some maps later of it around Australia, and you can see it's not as simple as it looks. But anyway, of course, poor old Zagreb got snotted. 6.3 is a big earthquake under any city, but a city in the early 1900s, it would have been devastating. But yeah, a lot of damage, lots of loss of life, and it has happened again since then. This Croatia's in a very active seismic area, but as you can see here, it's a beautiful town again. So there's a sort of a happy ending. If you don't count the Civil War. Don't talk about the war, all right? So we've got a pretty standard model of the Earth here. The surface, the asthenosphere, the upper mantle, the lower mantle, the outer core, the inner core. Just to give you some scale, from the crust to the inner core, at Brisbane's latitude, is 6,500 kilometres. The Earth isn't completely round, it's fatter at the equator, so it's a little closer at the poles, a little further at the equator, 6,500 k's. And this Moho is 60 kilometres down on average. It's a lot further in some places, as you'll see. So, yeah, it's not like these mantle plumes cut through the crust like a, well, laser.
Begin laser ignition sequence.
Do you expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
So these mantle plumes flick around more like a plasma ball. They're unstable. They move from side to side and whatever. So they don't cut like a laser, but they certainly do move around. And we'll see that, especially with the Cosgrove hotspot. It flicked around quite a lot. Let's go and have a look at these. There's 3 of them. There's actually 5 of them. Let's have a look at them all. Well, here's a diagram of the East Coast Australian volcanoes. Now, the red ones are all part of this hotspot activity. The yellow ones are much older, and that's a different origin. So if you look at the red ones, you can see they form some lines, especially the ones in the ocean where they haven't been subject to erosion. And if you look up the top, 32 mega years, and down the last 6, so it's gone to top to bottom in age. So I think we need to look at some closer data on this, because it's, you can see what's happening here. So this is the way we used to think of the East Australian hotspots. We had the East Australian hotspot, which was the one on the land. We had the Tasmid Tasmanid hotspot, which ran down the middle of the trench. And then there was the hotspot. Our thinking's evolved a little since then because we've realised that the hotspots on the coast of Australia are actually 3 separate trails. So let's have a look at that. So we now see there are 5 recognised separate hotspot plume trails that we travelled over the top of in the last 37 million years. The Lord Howe one off to the right, then the Tasmanid, and then the 3 that are on the land. So let's have a closer look at that because that's where we are. So folks, this diagram is a very large view of the whole Pacific Ocean near us. You can see the Tasmanid and the Lord Howe's, but we're going to zoom up on the landy bit, which where we are. So there are 3 tracks here. The Cosgrove track we've talked about, the Cannonbolus track we will talk about, and the Comboyne track. And here they are, and they're their ages. So you can see when these hotspots engaged the crust here and started melting through. Those blue indications are how thick the crust is. That's how far down it is to the Moho. And you can see there are very few volcanoes where the crust is thick. They mainly occur where it is thin. And 120 to 140 kilometres is a long way down, and 160 in places. Well folks, this is the latest map of the Moho depth in Australia. And those lines of little symbols you can see are actual samples. And one of them, you notice, runs right through Brisbane. So we know exactly, because it's been tested with seismic in this area. The rest are estimates. So as you can see, the centre of Australia is very thick and the edges are a bit thin. So where do we find all the volcanoes? Along the edges. So this whole Moho science is evolving. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of this in the next few years. Well folks, I'm going to hit you with some examples. So this is Wedge Island. You can actually walk to this at low tide. Up at Cape Hillsborough, this is Cape Hillsborough. This is a big massif of rhyolite. Up near Mackay. Moving down now, we've got a place called Hanging Rock. If you see these columns, you know this was solidified under the ground. It's not lava. This is Peak Range. You see all the mountains in the background there? We've done a few of those. Got Old Glasshouse Mountains. All came from these hotspots. All of them. So these all solidified under the ground as well. Trachyte, rhyolite, trachyte, all this garbage they've got up there. The Toowoomba Range, the main range volcanics, that's all from these hotspots. This is down around the border, about to come onto Mount Barney. That's all from these hotspots as well. There's old Mount Barney right there. Sorry about the glitch in that. Queensland Globe was not having a good day when I did that. Down to Mount Lindsay and all those mountains. Not all of them, the ones in the background aren't. This is out at the Carnarvon Gorge. All that red stuff is olivine lava from this event. Mount Warning, absolutely. This is from this event. Mount Warning had all of that volcanism down there, all the lava up on, this is up near Mackay, and this is also from this event. This is good old Mount Cooper, Fort Cooper, up near Mackay, all from the same event. These are not particularly old features, 20 million, you get closer down here. Now this is down in New South Wales. This is the bottom end of the Combalus, sorry. This is Mount Combalus. And right next to it is this big gold mine. This has been in the news lately for all the wrong reasons. And that geothermal activity came from this hotspot. That gold mine is there because of the Combalus hotspot. So there you go. Let's just have a quick look at that map that we had. This is just the Cosgrove hotspot. That's where they reckon it is now. All the way from Hillsborough right down through Cosgrove. I haven't showed you Cosgrove because there is nothing to see. It's a volcanic event. There's no mountains or hills there, nothing. Just a quick look at the seamounts. The Tasmanid seamount, something I have a great deal of trouble saying. You can see Brisbane there, but one thing I will draw your attention to, that's the remains of Mount Warning sitting on the ocean bed. There you go. Now these hotspots are not particularly uncommon. They're all over the world where this mantle is just bubbling away. So yeah, there are quite a few of them around the world. Well, folks, here we are back on Mars again. I don't know, I just gotta wait for the bus to get back home again. Anyway, that's the East Coast hotspots. There's a bit more in this, and there's a section that I wanted to plan, but it's getting a bit long, where how different vents can produce different lavas at different times of their life. We've seen that all over the place. I've got a bit worked up on that. I think I'll do a separate video on it though, because it's kind of important. You know, you see there's olivine lava, then all of a sudden it switches to rhyolite, then it switches to trachyte, then it switches back to olivine. Why the hell is that? Well, there is a reason. Anyway, we'll see. Thank you to all you new subscribers, of course, and something to announce. It's at the end of the video, so only you who stay get to get it. Is this mask coming off soon? Very soon. So stay tuned, and you might get to see the real T-Rox. Believe me, it's not much of an event. I get a great face for radio. But anyway, thanks for tuning in, and tell your friends if you think they'll like this gear. And of course, keep rocking. T-Rox out.